Daylight slanted through the dusty windows of St. Helena's orphanage, cutting long, soft lines across the quiet hallway. Outside, children played with worn-out toys, laughing like nothing in the world could ever break them. But inside room 14, a single beam of sunlight fell over a girl packing her small suitcase as if she were folding away the last pieces of her life. Lena moved slowly, carefully, as if she feared the walls might collapse the moment she stopped touching them. At 17, she was small, quiet, and always tense, like someone used to carrying secrets even she didn't understand. The orphanage was closing. The government notice taped to the office door said it clearly: relocation in 3 days. Lena had no one waiting for her. No distant aunt. No old family friend. Nothing but a future she could barely imagine. She folded her last shirt when she noticed something, a thin edge of paper sticking out from beneath the wooden bed frame. It looked old, yellowed, like it had been hiding there a long time. She knelt down, reached for it, and dragged out a dusty folder sealed with tape so brittle it cracked at her touch. Her heartbeat stumbled. Her name was written on it. Lena Russo, her legal name, the only thing she had ever been given for free. Inside the folder lay a birth certificate, a photograph of a baby wrapped in a hospital blanket, and one more document so faded it almost crumbled between her fingers. An adoption file. There were 2 signatures at the bottom, one from the orphanage, and one. Her breath caught. One was the name of a man feared in every whisper on the streets, a man whose shadow stretched across every corner of the city. Dante Moretti. Her hand shook so badly the papers rattled. Why would his name be here? Why would a mafia boss, one of the most dangerous men alive, sign anything connected to her birth? The room spun for a moment. The air felt thin. For the first time in years, fear and possibility collided in her chest like 2 storms meeting. Could this be a mistake? A forgery? A warning she wasn't supposed to find? Or was he the reason she ended up here at all? Lena sat back on her heels, staring at the signature until her vision blurred. The sunbeam across her lap made the ink look darker, sharper, like the name was burning itself into her life. She whispered into the empty room, "Why you?" But the paper had no voice, and the walls offered no answers. That night she didn't sleep. She paced her tiny room until footsteps in the hallway faded and the world outside grew silent. She held the folder against her chest the whole time, gripping it like it was the last clue in a mystery she didn't ask for. She imagined the story she had heard about Dante Moretti: cold eyes, a voice like steel, a reputation built on fear, a man no one approached willingly. And yet, something inside her told her this wasn't coincidence. This wasn't an accident. This signature meant something, and if she left it unanswered, it might haunt her for the rest of her life. By morning, she made her decision. She would go to him, even if it meant walking into the center of danger, even if it meant discovering a truth she wasn't ready to face. The city was bright and loud that morning, but Lena barely heard anything as she walked alone, hugging the folder inside her jacket. Dante Moretti's mansion stood on the far edge of town, an estate surrounded by high walls, iron gates, and men who didn't smile. She had seen it only once, from far away. It had looked like a fortress even then. Now she stood in front of it, trembling as 2 armed guards stared her down. One stepped forward, voice cold. "State your business." Lena swallowed hard. Her voice barely rose. I need to see Dante Moretti." The guard exchanged a look with his partner. "Not possible." She took a breath she didn't feel. "He signed my adoption papers." Both men froze. Their eyes snapped to her. Their expressions changed, not softer, but sharper, more careful, more alert. "Show me," one of them demanded. Her fingers shook as she opened the folder and held out the paper. The guard's brows pulled together, his jaw tightening. "Wait here." He disappeared inside the gates while the second guard kept his hand near his weapon, never breaking eye contact with her. Lena's heart hammered so loudly she wondered if the guard could hear it too. Minutes stretched painfully thin. The sun felt harsh on her skin. Her nerves screamed at her to run, but her feet stayed planted. Finally, The first guard returned. "Come with me." The gates opened. She stepped into a world she had only seen in rumors. Marble steps, tall pillars, shadows moving behind tinted windows. Everything looked expensive, silent, and dangerous. Inside the mansion, the air felt colder. Too still, too clean. The guard led her down a long hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking men who all seemed to watch her pass. At the end of the hall was a wooden door, so dark it looked almost black. The guard opened it. Inside, Lena stepped in. The room was large, filled with shelves of books and long windows where sunlight fell in sharp angles across a heavy desk. Behind it stood a man with his back to her, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows. He didn't turn immediately. His voice reached her first, deep, calm, with an edge that made the air tighten. "You've caused quite a stir this morning." Lena's breath caught. He turned. Dante Moretti was nothing like the stories. He was worse. His presence wrapped the room in something cold and heavy. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and when they locked onto hers, she felt like he saw straight through her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she whispered. "And why did you come here?" She swallowed, forcing her voice steady. "I found something in my adoption papers." She stepped forward, offering the folder with trembling hands. Dante didn't reach for it. He watched her for a long, uncomfortable moment before finally taking it. He opened the file. His face did not move at first. Not a blink, not a shift in his jaw, but his fingers tightened around the paper. "You shouldn't have come," he murmured, not looking up. The words hit her like a slap. "Why?" "What does it mean?" Dante's eyes lifted to hers, sharp, intense, almost pained. "Who told you to come here?" His voice dropped lower. "Who sent you?" "No one," she said quickly. "I found it myself. I swear." His jaw clenched. A shadow passed across his face. His control slipped for a brief second, and she saw something she didn't expect. Fear. Real fear. But before she could ask anything else, a guard burst into the room. "Sir, someone followed the girl here." Dandy's head snapped toward the door. Lena's stomach dropped. Someone had followed her. The guard continued, breathless. "We found footprints near the gate. Not ours. And fresh." The air thickened. Dante's expression transformed into something darker. He turned to Lena slowly. "What exactly did you bring to my doorstep?" Lena stepped back, shaking her head. I don't know. I didn't bring anyone. I came alone. I swear." But Dante wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at the adoption paper again, eyes narrowed, jaw locked. He whispered something under his breath, something she barely caught. This should never have resurfaced. Her pulse thudded painfully. What was happening? Why was everyone acting like this signature was a threat? Suddenly Dante stepped around the desk, standing inches from her. His presence was overwhelming, commanding, dangerous, impossible to read. "You have no idea," he said softly, "what you've walked into." The guard at the door stiffened. More footsteps echoed down the hallway. Fast, urgent. Another guard appeared. "Sir, they're coming." Danny's eyes hardened instantly. "Get her out of here," he ordered. Lena's breath hitched. "Who's coming?" Dante didn't answer. He grabbed her arm, not rough, but firm, and pulled her toward a side door. His voice was low, serious, full of something she couldn't name. "You're in danger. And now, so am I." The hallway outside filled with noises, shouting, movement, boots hitting the marble floors. Lena's world tilted. The name on her papers wasn't just a signature. It was a warning. And something, or someone, was coming for her. The air in the grand hall felt heavier than usual, almost suffocating. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching the dust motes in the air. But even the bright daylight couldn't wash away the tension that clung to the room like a second skin. Every step she took echoed across the polished marble floor, and with each echo, she felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on her. She had never been anywhere like this. The glittering chandeliers, the expensive suits, the polished shoes, all of it screamed wealth and danger in equal measure. But she couldn't look away. She couldn't let herself stop. Her hand shook slightly as she clutched the adoption papers, the ones that had changed everything. She had found his name, his real name, written in black ink among the signatures. A name that could have changed her life. Or destroyed it. From the corner of her eye, she noticed them. At first, she thought it was her imagination, just shadows on the walls. But no, they were watching. Men in dark suits, standing in the background, their eyes sharp and cold, their expressions unreadable, but their presence screamed warning. She felt their gaze dig into her chest, making her heart pound faster. Why are they watching me? She thought, swallowing hard. Do they know what I'm about to say? Do they know that I know? Her pulse quickened. Every instinct told her to run, to turn and escape. But something inside her, something braver than fear, urged her forward. She had come too far to stop now. And deep down, she knew. The man whose name she had found wasn't just anyone. He was the reason these people were here, watching, waiting. As she walked toward the marble staircase, she noticed a man sitting near the entrance, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He didn't move, didn't blink, but somehow she felt the weight of his stare. She remembered her life before, small apartments, cold nights, endless loneliness, and realized she had never felt so small, so fragile, and yet so alive. Every step made her more certain that her life had just shifted into a world she didn't understand. She could feel it. The tension in the room thickened, the air buzzing with anticipation, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a low murmur from the back of the hall. She could see heads turning, eyes narrowing. They had noticed her. And then, a single voice, sharp and commanding, cut through the tension like a knife. Who is that girl? Her stomach twisted into knots. She didn't have an answer. She only had the papers and the truth she had just discovered. The papers that bore his name. The papers that could ruin everything. Her thoughts raced. If I speak, if I tell him. She shivered. Will he believe me? Or will they? Will they come for me? The people watching her seemed to sense her uncertainty. A tall man stepped closer, his shoes clicking against the floor in a rhythm that felt like a countdown. She could feel the collective attention of everyone in the room. Every eye trained on her, as if she were the center of a storm. She tried to steady her breathing. Focus. Just focus. She remembered her life in the orphanage, the nights she had spent reading old letters, dreaming of family, of belonging. But she had never imagined that family could be someone like him. Someone so dangerous. Someone whose name alone could command fear and respect in this city. A sudden movement caught her eye. From behind a velvet curtain, a shadow flickered. She froze, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. She realized she wasn't just being watched by the men in suits. Someone else, someone far more powerful, was here, observing her every move, waiting for the moment to decide her fate. The air seemed to tighten around her as she took another step forward. Her hands shook, and the papers crumpled slightly in her grip. She knew she had a choice. She could turn back, leave this place, pretend she had found nothing. Or she could step into the unknown and confront the man whose name had haunted her dreams since she first picked up those papers. Her eyes scanned the room, trying to find him, to see if he was watching her too. And then she saw it, a shadow slipping past the doorway, a hint of movement that made her stomach drop. He was here, the mafia boss, the man whose name she had found, and every instinct in her body screamed that nothing would ever be the same again. The people around her shifted slightly, like predators circling a prey that didn't yet realize its danger. She could feel the tension thickening, the anticipation building. Every whispered word, every glance exchanged, every subtle nod told her one thing. Her secret had not gone unnoticed. And now, there was no turning back. Her fingers tightened around the papers. She could almost hear her own heartbeat in the silence. The men watching her were waiting for a signal, a reaction, any sign that would reveal her intentions. And she had only one chance to control the moment. Then, she heard it. A single, deliberate step behind her. A shadow loomed closer, larger, more commanding than anything else in the room. Her stomach twisted, Her pulse raced, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. He knows, she thought, frozen in place. He knows that I found him. The eyes in the room followed every movement. The murmurs grew louder, and for the first time, she felt truly exposed. She was no longer just an orphan girl holding a piece of paper. She was a threat, a revelation, a spark in a room full of powder. And then, as she finally turned to see him, standing tall and impossibly calm at the edge of the room, her voice caught in her throat. The moment stretched, heavy and suffocating, as though the entire day itself had paused. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The papers felt impossibly heavy in her hands, and the eyes of everyone in the hall were fixed on her. Somewhere deep inside, a tiny, defiant spark whispered, "This is it. This is your moment. Speak!" But before she could gather her courage, before she could confront the truth, a sharp, low laugh echoed from the corner of the room. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't welcoming. It was a warning. And in that instant, she realized she wasn't just being watched. She was being judged, evaluated, and her life was about to change forever. The tension was unbearable. The air vibrated with it, thick and electric. Every step, every glance, every breath felt like a countdown to something inevitable. And just as her hands trembled over the papers, ready to reveal the truth, the door at the far end of the hall slammed open with a thunderous bang. All eyes turned, all attention shifted. And in that moment, she understood one terrifying truth. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of a grand clock on the far wall. Sunlight spilled across the polished wooden floors, but it felt cold, almost lifeless, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She stood frozen, clutching the adoption papers tightly, the ink name searing her thoughts. Across the room, he watched her, his dark eyes unreadable, but heavy with something she couldn't yet name: curiosity, anger, or recognition. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. He knows. He knows I found him. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she was rooted to the spot. Something deep inside whispered that this moment, the confrontation, was unavoidable. She had come this far. There was no turning back. Then he spoke, his voice low and deliberate, carrying a weight that made the air itself tremble. "So you've seen my name," he said. No accusation, no anger, just a calm that made her blood run cold. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her trembling voice. I found it in my adoption papers," she said, her words barely more than a whisper. Your name." For a moment, he didn't move. His gaze didn't waver. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, each movement precise, controlled, like a predator closing in on its prey. She felt the room shrink with each step he took. The men who had been watching her shifted slightly, their eyes flicking between the two of them, silent witnesses to the tension. "You have no idea what this means, do you?" His voice was calm, almost kind, but the intensity in his eyes betrayed the danger lurking beneath. She shook her head, unable to speak. Her mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Adoption papers, a mysterious name, a man whose presence alone commanded fear and respect. Could it be true? Could he? Could he really be my father? He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the faint scars on his hands, the hardened lines on his face. There was a history there, a life carved out of struggle, violence, and power. And now, somehow, her life was entwined with it. "You are," he said slowly, as if testing the word on his tongue, "the last of a bloodline I thought was lost." Her stomach dropped. The words hit her like a punch. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. My bloodline? Lost. Her mind whirled. All her life, she had felt invisible, unimportant, abandoned. And now she was standing in the same room as a man who held power, fear, and secrets in his very bones. And he was saying she was a part of it. "You don't understand yet," he continued, his tone softer now, almost gentle. "There are things in your past, things you weren't meant to know, secrets that were buried to protect you." To protect us all. Her eyes filled with tears, blurring the sunlight that streamed in. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why me? Why now? Her voice cracked, the weight of years of loneliness and unanswered questions spilling out. He looked away for a brief moment, his jaw tight, a shadow crossing his face. Because the truth is dangerous, and danger finds those who aren't ready for it. Her mind raced, the pieces of her life scattering like leaves in a storm. She had always wondered why she never truly belonged, why she felt different, why the world seemed both familiar and alien at the same time. And now, it was all starting to make a terrifying kind of sense. You're my father? Her voice barely rose above a whisper, fragile, trembling, yet filled with the desperate need for confirmation. He didn't answer immediately. He studied her, his eyes searching for something beyond the surface: fear, hope, acceptance, perhaps even defiance. Then he finally spoke, his voice firm, resonating with authority. I am. And now, knowing this, you need to understand something very important. Your life, it will never be the same. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. The weight of his words pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. She had found him, yes, but finding him had opened a door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. Why? Why now? She asked, her voice shaking. Why tell me now? He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the heat radiating off him. Because you were always meant to know. But timing matters in ways you cannot imagine. And there are people, dangerous people, who have been watching, waiting, judging. They know as well. Her eyes widened. The people watching me. They know my bloodline? The realization made her heart skip a beat. Everything was connected. The men in suits, the shadows in the corners, the eyes that followed her every move. You mean, all this, it's not just about me? She whispered, a tremor of fear in her voice. No, he said quietly, almost regretfully. It's about power, about legacy, about survival. And now, it's about you. The words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. She had always imagined meeting her father as a moment of warmth, perhaps joy. But this was not warmth. This was danger, mystery, and a legacy she wasn't sure she wanted to inherit. Her thoughts swirled with 1,000 questions. How had he hidden from her? Why had he allowed her to grow up in an orphanage, alone, unaware of the family she had? And most importantly, could she trust him? Before she could voice the questions aloud, the faintest sound caught her attention, a soft rustle, almost imperceptible. Her gaze flicked toward the doorway, where a shadow shifted, like a silent warning. The people who had been watching her, they were still there, waiting, judging, their expressions unreadable. She realized then that her revelation, the discovery of her bloodline, was not just hers to bear. It was a secret that could change everything in this room, in his world, and in hers. Her father, her mafia boss father, was a man of immense power, a man whose enemies were countless, a man whose name alone commanded fear. And now, somehow, she was part of it. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the adoption papers again. I never asked for this. I never wanted this. But it's my reality now. He reached out, not touching her, but closing the distance with his presence alone. You will need to decide soon, he said. Will you accept this bloodline, or run from it? The words were heavy, laden with destiny and danger. Her chest tightened. She had always dreamed of family, of belonging, but she hadn't dreamed of this, of power, violence, and secrets. Her mind raced as she tried to imagine the future, her life intertwined with a world she didn't yet understand, surrounded by people she had just met, under the shadow of a father she barely knew. And then, just as the tension seemed almost unbearable, a sharp sound echoed through the hall, the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. Every head turned, every breath caught. The people who had been watching her shifted, alert and ready. She felt her pulse spike, a jolt of fear and adrenaline flooding her veins. Her eyes darted toward her father. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. But in that instant, she understood. This was just the beginning. Her hidden bloodline was more dangerous than she could have imagined, and the choices she made next could cost her everything. And as the shadow of a new threat fell over the room, she realized with a cold certainty her life would never be the same again. The night air was thick and heavy, carrying the scent of rain-soaked streets and distant smoke. She stood at the edge of the balcony, the city lights stretching endlessly below her, each one a reminder of the world she had never known, a world of power, danger, and secrets that now defined her life. The adoption papers were still clutched in her hands, crumpled but precious, like a lifeline connecting her past to the unknown future. Her mind raced with a storm of thoughts. This is it. This is my chance. But can I do it? Can I really step into a life I've never imagined? Behind her, the soft click of polished shoes on marble made her pulse jump. He had followed her, silent and imposing as ever, his presence filling the space behind her even before she turned to look. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice calm, but filled with unspoken intensity. "Thinking?" She swallowed hard, trying to steady the tremor in her hands. I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I've known, it's gone. And now this." She held up the papers, her fingers gripping them so tightly they were nearly white. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, the weight of his presence almost suffocating. "I won't lie to you," he said. "This life, it's not easy. It's dangerous. People will try to use you. People will try to hurt you. But it's yours if you want it." Her stomach twisted. She had always dreamed of belonging somewhere, of having family, of feeling safe. But she had never dreamed of a family built on fear, power, and shadows. Could she really accept this? Could she walk alongside a man whose name alone made others tremble? Her thoughts drifted back to the orphanage, the nights she had cried herself to sleep, the empty bed, the unanswered questions. She had spent so long feeling invisible, unwanted, abandoned. And now, for the first time in her life, someone, her father, was offering her a place, a connection, a bloodline she never thought she had. But at what cost? The wind swept past her, tugging at her hair, and she shivered. "I'm scared," she admitted, the word tasting like both relief and shame. "I don't know if I can handle it." He studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes piercing through the shadows. "Fear doesn't make you weak," he said quietly. "It makes you human. But courage is what will carry you forward. The choice is yours. You can walk away, forget what you've learned, and stay in the world you know. Or you can step into this life. Embrace it. Own it." She felt the weight of his words pressing down on her, the gravity of the moment nearly unbearable. Her fingers trembled around the papers as she thought about the life she had known, the quiet, lonely days, the endless uncertainty, and compared it to the life being offered to her now. A life of power, influence, danger, and family. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't just from fear. They were from hope, from longing, from the ache of a lifetime spent searching for something she never knew she had. I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I don't want to run anymore." He nodded slowly, as if he had expected this answer all along. "Then you're ready," he said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made the words feel like a promise. "Being ready doesn't mean you won't stumble. It means you'll keep moving forward, no matter what." Her heart raced. She felt both exhilarated and terrified, the two emotions colliding in a storm that left her breathless. She looked down at the city below, the endless streets and lights reflecting her own confusion, her own uncertainty. And yet, somewhere deep inside, she felt a spark of determination ignite. I accept," she said finally, her voice steadying as she spoke the words aloud. I want to know, to belong, to to be part of this." He studied her, a faint, unreadable expression crossing his face. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. It was both an invitation and a test, a gesture that carried the weight of everything she had just decided to embrace. She hesitated for a heartbeat, her eyes locking with his. Every instinct screamed caution. Every fiber of her being urged her to step back. But then, with a trembling breath, she placed her hand in his. The contact was electric, grounding, and terrifying all at once. She could feel the strength in his grip, the certainty, the power, and for the first time, she felt protected, connected, not alone. But even as she took that first step into her new reality, a shadow fell across the balcony, a cold, sharp chill that didn't belong to the night air. Her heart skipped. She looked up and saw a figure watching her from the rooftop across the street. Her pulse quickened. Who is that? The thought sent a jolt of fear through her. The people who had been observing her, the men who had always been in the shadows, was this one of them? Or was it someone else entirely, someone whose intentions were far more dangerous than she could imagine? He followed her gaze, his expression darkening. "They're still watching," he said quietly. "And now they know you've made your choice." A cold realization washed over her. Her decision, though filled with hope and courage, had not gone unnoticed. Every step she took from here would be measured, judged, and challenged. The path she had chosen was fraught with danger, and the moment she stepped fully into this life, there would be no turning back. Her hands tightened around his as she tried to steady her shaking body. She had chosen this path, but the weight of that choice pressed down on her like a mountain. She had accepted her bloodline, accepted her father, and accepted a life she had never imagined. But now, she understood that acceptance came with a price. From the corner of her eye, she noticed movement in the shadows below, figures slipping silently along the alleyways, vanishing before she could get a clear look. Her breath caught in her throat. This isn't over, she thought. It's only just beginning. Her father's voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. You've made your choice. Now, be ready. Whatever comes next. You must be strong. And you must trust me. She nodded, her determination mingling with fear, hope mingling with doubt. The city below seemed to pulse with possibility and danger all at once. Her life had changed forever, and there was no turning back. But as the wind tugged at her hair and the shadows shifted in the streets below, she realized one undeniable truth. The choice she had made would not only define her future, it would also put her in the crosshairs of enemies she had not yet seen. The night stretched before her, endless and uncertain, carrying the echoes of the decision she had just made. Every heartbeat, every shadow, every whisper of the wind reminded her that she was now part of a world far larger and far more dangerous than anything she had ever known. And just as she took a deep breath, ready to step fully into this new life, a sudden, deafening crash came from inside the building, the sound of glass shattering, of alarms blaring, of chaos erupting in a place that had seemed untouchable. Her father stiffened, his eyes darkened, and in that instant, she realized that the world she had chosen was ready to test her. The city lights glimmered like distant stars below, but up here, in the penthouse that overlooked it all, the world felt heavy, suffocating, and unbearably still. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, the cool glass pressing against her palm, her mind spinning with everything she had learned, the hidden bloodline, the men watching her, the life she had just chosen. Yet despite all the answers she had, a single, impossible question haunted her. What is the real truth? Her father, the mafia boss, stepped closer, his shadow falling over her like a dark promise. His eyes, intense and unreadable, were fixed on her. You've seen the pieces, he said quietly. But now, it's time you see the whole picture. She turned to him, searching for warmth, for reassurance. What she found instead was a storm, strength, danger, and a hint of vulnerability that only made her pulse race faster. Tell me, she whispered, her voice trembling but determined. I need to know everything. No lies. No secrets. Not anymore. He studied her, the lines on his face deepening. Everything comes at a cost, he said softly. You should know that before I tell you the truth. Her chest tightened. I've already paid so much. I've already risked everything just to find him. Just to find myself. She clenched the crumpled adoption papers in her hands. I don't care, she said firmly. I need to know who I am and why you were part of my past." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then he exhaled slowly, as if releasing a burden he had carried for decades. "You were never just an orphan. You were part of a bloodline that many believed had vanished forever. I I tried to protect you by keeping you away from this world, away from the enemies who would use you, hurt you, or destroy you." Her heart raced. Every word pulled at her, reshaping the reality she thought she knew. "But why leave me in an orphanage? Why not? Why not raise me yourself?" His gaze softened, a rare vulnerability flashing in his eyes. "Because the world I live in, it's unforgiving, it's dangerous, and I could not risk your life. I thought, I thought I could find you when the time was right. But even I underestimated the forces that have been watching." She felt tears sting her eyes. For the first time, she saw him, not just as a figure of fear, but as a man who had made impossible choices, sacrifices no one could understand. Her hand shook as she touched the papers, tracing the name that had changed everything. "And now," she asked softly, "now that I know the truth, what happens next?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat from his presence. "Now, you make a choice," he said. "You can embrace your bloodline, accept the power, the danger, the family, or you can walk away, leave this life behind, and never look back." Her mind raced. She had dreamed of family, of belonging, for as long as she could remember. And now it was within her grasp. But so was a life of risk, of enemies, of darkness. Could she truly step into it? Could she accept what she was being offered, knowing the price that came with it? The wind swept through the room, tugging at her hair, and for a moment she closed her eyes. She saw her past, cold orphanage walls, lonely nights, unanswered questions. She saw herself now, stronger, braver, but vulnerable, standing on the edge of a life that could consume her. Her eyes opened, meeting his once more. I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper. "But I can't walk away. Not now. Not after everything." A faint smile touched his lips, almost imperceptible, but enough to make her heart skip. "Then you've already made your choice," he said quietly. "And I will stand by you as long as you stand by yourself first." Her pulse quickened as the weight of his words settled around her. She had chosen the unknown, the dangerous, the uncertain, but she had chosen it with her eyes wide open. And for the first time, she felt alive. But just as relief began to wash over her, a sharp, piercing noise split the air, the sound of glass shattering, alarms blaring, chaos erupting in the penthouse. Her body froze. Her heart raced. From the corner of her eye, she saw shadows moving, figures darting through the room with terrifying speed. The men who had always watched her, the enemies who had lingered unseen, now they were here, and the threat was immediate. Her father's eyes narrowed, and in an instant, his calm demeanor shifted into lethal precision. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice low but iron strong. "Don't move unless I tell you." She nodded, her breath catching, and for the first time truly understood the danger of the world she had chosen. This wasn't a life of simple choices. It was a life of constant vigilance, of shadows and secrets, of battles fought in silence and blood. The chaos swirled around them, a storm of danger and uncertainty, and in that moment, she realized the truth. She could never go back. The orphan she had once been was gone. In her place stood a young woman who had discovered her bloodline, faced her fears, and chosen a path that would change her life forever. Her mind raced with possibilities, with strategies, with hope and fear intertwined. And in that split second, she made another choice, not just to accept her bloodline, but to fight for it, to survive, and to protect the family she had just found. Her father's hand brushed against hers, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. "Together," he said, and in his voice was both promise and warning, "together, we face everything." The room erupted around them, shouts, crashing glass, the unmistakable scent of danger, but she no longer felt paralyzed. She had chosen her path. She had embraced her truth, and now The next move was hers. As the chaos reached its peak, a single thought rang clear in her mind. She was no longer an orphan. She had a name, a family, and a destiny she had never imagined. And whatever came next, she would face it with courage, with heart, and with the knowledge that she had made her choice. The alarms, the chaos, the unknown threats, everything waited outside the moment she had just claimed. And as she and her father moved forward, side by side, she knew one undeniable truth. Her life would never, ever be the same again. And for the first time, she welcomed it.